Thank you, Ms. Koznik, and thanks again to all the presenters on this stage. And now I will pass the microphone to Mr. Adrian Bakic, who will moderate the next panel, Innovative Water Resource Conservation Approaches, and he will also present his guests on the stage.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon also from my side, and really warm welcome to 6 distinguished guests we are having here today. In the next hour, we're going to try to focus on sustainable water management. We're going to try to talk about opportunities, about goals that we might have for the future, and especially in cross-border projects. All our guests today, they are part of interesting projects, all EU-funded projects. They will present more in detail what are they about. So in the first round, I'll just pass them the word. I'll briefly present them. They will tell you about their projects, which are, I would say, projects for the future in this spectrum, in this topic. So I would maybe start with Mrs. Brigita Jamnik. Your project is about groundwater. Maybe it's one topic that we all think it's the most important, the most basic. Maybe in Slovenia we're thinking that it's something we're taking for granted. But what would you say, what are the results of your project?
So let me start with a few words about our AMIIGA project. It has a complicated English title, but behind the complicated English and complex title, it is simply care for, as you said, quality of the groundwater. So I work for Ljubljana water supply for more than 20 years. As a person responsible for drinking water quality, and I am also responsible for watching over the potential threats that could endanger the health of our consumers. And because the groundwater is the only source of drinking water in Ljubljana, it is not a coincidence that Ljubljana water supply at the moment has 4 European projects running. So one of these 4 is AMIIGA, as I said. We started the project in 2016 with a clear goal. So how to protect the drinking water quality for the future generation, or how to improve the groundwater quality for the future. At the end of the project, our project will end this autumn. We can say that we finished or came to our goal. It is a kind of plan how to proceed with our activities at the end of this project. So we know exactly where are our problems. So we clearly defined the most important pollution in our source of drinking water. We prioritize these problems according to the risk analysis. Then we came to conclusion what we have to do with what kind of remedial measures we have to work. We know exactly how will this cost and who should do these actions. So at the end, we can conclude that we have a plan as we should have a plan in our private life. So in the previous decades, a lot of research activities were done regarding improving the groundwater quality, but we can conclude that it was only AMIIGA who taught us how to start working on real problems systematically. So as I said before, I would like to confirm again at the end of AMIIGA project we have a plan and we know exactly what to do at the end of this project.
Okay, thank you very much for now. We're going to continue with the project PROLINE-CE of Barbara Čenčur Curk. You are combining actually, it's an innovative approach, let's say, land use and water protection. Sometimes one might think this is not going really one with another. How does it go?
Thank you. It's not my project. I'm only leading it. And in this project, beside the University of Ljubljana, also Ljubljana Waterworks is involved. So this is one of these 4 projects Brigita was talking about. Yeah, the main goal of the project is to look problems or conflicts regarding drinking water protection, and also not only that in Slovenia the most drinking water is coming from groundwater, but also in other countries like in Poland and other countries, the drinking water is coming from surface water, but nevertheless they have all the same issue, the protection of drinking water, and this is actually to see how the land use is, or what activities are in the recharge areas, either in drinking surface waters or recharge areas of the groundwater. So land use activities are the activities which can endanger water quality. And we focused also on climate change, which is mostly affecting the water scarcity or water quantity. So what our main goal was not to point to the activities which are the worst and or something like that, but to see what are the best management practices of these activities. How can we improve water protection? And actually the major outcome of the project is also that it's very important to cooperate among experts itself and to cooperate among stakeholders, end users like farmers, or on the other hand, people from the ministries or local communities from the communities. So actually this is the most important. But it is not easy task to handle with land use activities and the drinking water protection. Because there are so many interests in the place. But the most important is that in Slovenia we have drinking water protection zones, drinking water protection areas, where actually legally these actions in the area are restricted or limited or prohibited. Not all European countries have these drinking water protection zones, because Water Framework Directive says that member states may establish these zones. It's not necessity, so it's on to the country. And maybe I should say also that we focused in Ljubljana. We have also pilot actions, and one pilot action was also potential water well field, because it's not there. Because water supplies have to have reserve water sources, which are independent from the existing sources. So this is also very important. So we focused on that area. And the project was not only about the drinking water protection, but also the collision with flood protections, non-structural flood protection measures. So we selected one area in Ljubljana where we have both potential drinking water source, groundwater source, and flood problems and non-structural flood measures for that. So yeah, maybe for the beginning.
Okay, thank you very much. And if I'm not wrong, your project is really connected to the project of Mr. Daniel Kozelj, CAMARO-D. It's a European project for better spatial planning, let's say briefly. And your aim is also to provide inputs for politics. Are you, with your project, meeting the goals?
Thank you. Yes, the CAMARO-D project is quite similar to the PROLINE project. It's located in the Danube region. So from the 19 countries of the Danube region, 9 of them are partners to the project, and we have like 14 different pilot sites which are investigating the correlation and interdependencies between catchments and water resources planning. Together with this issue, we are looking at spatial planning and spatial land use development plans for a better understanding and, of course, management of these areas. Both of them affect the river, the water resources which are located in the catchment, or the mitigation of flood risks. We have been challenged by a lot of different negative effects practices which are currently undergoing in the Danube region. We have studied them, identified through the gaps the opportunities with best management practices, and came up with a tool and a decision framework called land use development plans. In this area of the Danube region, it is, of course, a lot of countries are present, and the catchments are also cross-border. So spatial planning, which is a category on the national level or local level and locally organized, is of course a major issue in this cross-border river basin management plans. From this point of view, the CAMARO-D project identified, came up with solutions, came up with guidance and a framework which should be flexible for all stakeholders to engage, and for different countries that it has a cross-border relationship. The project is also in its finishing stages through the interconnection with the CAMARO, with the PROLINE project, which is focusing on the Central European area. We have also made a final conference where a memorandum of understanding was signed to promote this framework further also after the life of the project and engage the sustainability, and that this could be someday taken over by directives or other legal documents in the broader area of the Danube, and of course also in Europe.
Okay. Thank you very much. When we are in the Danube region, let's just move to Mrs. Andreja Sušnik. The main objective of your project, Draft Risk in the Danube region, is to increase the capacity of the Danube region to manage draft-related risks. When talking about drafts, we're usually talking about what is happening afterwards. But what could we do before that? Can you explain your project? And
yeah, thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. So as it was mentioned, our project is called DriDanube. So it's basically the acronym is showing that we are talking about drought risk in the Danube region. And so in our project, basically what was our motivation? So I have been listening to the mayor's speech, and he mentioned that Slovenia is rain-sufficient country, is a country not really detecting this kind of problems. This is basically not the case. And with this we would like to change, this proactive way of thinking. So in spite of the fact that in Alpine region, and Slovenia is also among them, we have quite severe problems, speaking about the quite big numbers, in all the economical sectors that are related to water. So this was basically our main motivation for the project. So drought are becoming more severe in the region of Southeastern Europe and Danube region as well, and affected not only agriculture, which is the core business and mainly affected sector in all the regions, in all the countries that are involved in the project, but still what we have found in last decades, the droughts affect very much also the other sectors. So therefore the motivation was, and I'm happy that we had presentation about the glasses. So what we would like to do to wear the same glasses, how to observe drought in real time. So all the countries, they have some monitoring already in place, but it is not homogenized, it's not harmonized. So sometimes you really don't know where the hot spot is. So with this innovative tool, we call this Drought Watch, we are observing the drought development in all Danube region with the same tool. It's called Drought Watch. If you will have time, there are leaflets outside and you can have a look. Click on this Drought Watch. And you can also, for today, you can find what kind of drought development, if there is any, is going on in the region. So basically, I would like to share with you that in spite of the fact that we had quite severe problems with the rainy period in last month, after having this first heat wave here in the region, probably this water will evaporate very fast. So we can observe with this tool developed by DriDanube project in all the countries in the same way how the drought is developing. But you're going back to your question, how we will change this reactive approach to proactive approach. This is sometimes we will deliver to the end. We already established a so-called protocols, how to combine drought monitoring tools with the management. So we are very happy that we included inside a lot of public, also society, and we have developed really, this is the highlight of our project, reporters on the field. So on weekly routine, they can collect information about the drought and send us this information back to check the data which are integrated inside the Drought Watch, to check how these remote sensing based data are really showing us the real situation in the field. So now we have, perhaps colleagues can correct me, but around 1,000 reporters all over the region. And they are reporting to us on weekly routine just what the impact on the ground is. And finally, speaking about the strategy, of course, we have optimal drought management model, but sincerely, it's not so easy task because we are not like colleagues in United Kingdom. They have drought directive. I would really like to have drought directive here in European level as well. But please remember that also the last year, which was in this region not really giving us a lot of problems, but we had severe problems in northern part of Europe, Sweden and other societies in the, let us say, beyond the Danube region, and they are completely not prepared. With forest fires and this kind of problems with water supply or water scarcity in some regions. So therefore our project will bring to the society new tools and perhaps protocols which should be obeyed in advance and not just waiting for the subsidies which will come from the governments to the mainly farmers in this case. So please visit our stand outside, and perhaps just one remark. Of course, we didn't start it from the scratch, so this is quite a, let us say, fruitful work with networks we already have in this region, and I would like to mention Drought Management Center, which is also based at Slovenian Environment Agency and having quite many years of experience in this field. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's just continue with Mr. Banovec, Primož Banovec, the project FRAMWAT. Your project is also aiming to strengthen framework for floods, for droughts, for pollution mitigation, by using retention measures, using ecosystem. Can you tell us what does ecosystem means for you, for your project?
No. I'm more about the floods, so I'm not talking about ecosystems. Some others will be talking about the ecosystems here, I think. So we are on the other side probably of the events with Andreja, and we are addressing with this project, of course, more or less retention capacity in the river basin, and the events relatively, of course, slightly to droughts, but mostly to the flood management. Our pilot case, this is your Central European project, and our pilot case is Kamniška Bistrica in Slovenia. And for the Kamniška Bistrica, we are developing highly advanced, to say, hydrological model and hydraulic model. So basically, it is as we would distribute or segmentize the Kamniška Bistrica to more than 2 million subcatchments and calculate the floods and hydrological processes in it. And this is only the higher level of the computation, because underneath there's a layer of more detailed model of approximately 15 million cells. And this is, let's say, really technical stuff of this flood modeling and how the retention and improved retention improves. This is not so sustainable because it consumes lots of electricity to compute the Kamniška Bistrica watershed, but it's worth. And by this really know far in more detail, and it's more, let's say, plastic way, a realistic way to demonstrate also to the stakeholders. But this is only one level of, let's say, challenge we are addressing. The other challenge is actually to address three components which are critical in any water management. We are talking about time component, we are talking about the spatial component and the institutional component. Because the time components, we are addressing the floods, modeling floods, working in floods, but they are occurring very fast and very short time events. So basically, how to span this component, how to explain it, how to approach it, how to manage it, and how to explain that we have to work months, years to address a specific event which will take only a couple of hours. So this is quite a huge challenge anywhere in water management. The next is spatial challenge, because basically we are addressing distributed measures, which can be sometimes very small, thousands of them, and they affect, as a sum of all these distributed measures, retention in our case, they address the entire watershed, and how to communicate, implement, and discuss, it's a very big challenge. And the third one is institutional. Well, we meet here, many institutions, you're coming from different backgrounds, we meet here once a year, and we communicate to each other. With some of you we communicate, and intercommunications between institutions are more regular, but there are so many gaps among the institutions, and our project is also addressing these communication gaps which are occurring in, let's say, relation to the improved retention capacity, overall retention capacity in the river basin. So these are the challenges. We are working on it with the European partners. So our partner is Slovenia, is also Slovenian Water Agency as associated partner, and well, I can talk, and the Limnos, of course, not to forget them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And our sixth guest today is Mrs. Nataša Atanasova. Your project is rather interesting, I would say. It's food production in urban centers. Sometimes it seems a little bit awkward, but can you tell us how did you in your project imagine that?
It is indeed. So the project is called EdiCitNet. The aim of the project is to create a network of edible cities. So where is water here? I would say everywhere. But let me explain just briefly what the project is about and where water is in this project. So the project aims to address some global challenges. It sounds ambitious, but actually, why cities? It's not a secret that majority of the population will live in cities. The projections are 70%. And this means that the major demand for resources comes from cities. And this demand is satisfied by the outside borders of the cities. So we hear about floods, we know what is happening with agriculture, and also water is supplied outside. This means that our demand is satisfied by deteriorating ecosystems outside. Some of them are closer, some of them are far away. The project claims that these resources can be, at least in a, let's say, good portion, supplied from inside the cities. And this means big impact, positive impact to the other ecosystems. What do I mean? So when we talk about edible cities, it's not about just urban gardening for hobby, but it's food production as a systemic solution in the same way as we have systemic solution for water infrastructure. So, and water infrastructure at the moment, we know that it functions in a pretty much linear way, which means that we import the nutrients and then using water we wash them out of the city. Instead of that, we aim to keep the water and nutrients in the city and to grow food, maybe not edible plants, but it can be industrial plants or other. So basically, we want to move from, let's say, gardening as a hobby into food production as a food infrastructure that could be part of the systemic solution in the city. So this project, has like 35 partners, and some of the, let's say, leading cities in these activities are parts of the project. So just to name few, our partners are Oslo, Rotterdam, Berlin will become a front-runner city, Andernach, and Havana. So these cities are selected as front-runner cities, and the way how we will address this problem, or how we will demonstrate these edible city solutions, is by creating living labs. These living labs will be living for 5 years, and we'll monitor them. We'll monitor the food production in these cities, and then we have a whole bunch of follower cities that will actually, their task will not be just to follow what the front-runner cities are doing, but to create their master plans in a way that the edible will be a big part of their master plans. So in short, what is characteristic for this project is that we are connecting water and food, in some cases also energy. And all this, so growing food from local resources in the cities, and we will test how far we can go with these concepts. It is very challenging because we need a lot of changes, systemic changes. We need to recover all the resources from the so-called wastewater still, but we don't consider it as wastewater. We consider it as water, nutrients, and energy, which is in this water. And so far, so basically, what we have in this project is also different sectors. We have different disciplines, as I said, water, food, and energy. And we have people from social sciences as well. But we also have representatives from different sectors that are all needed for these solutions to become alive. So we have municipalities, we have researchers, and we have also companies. So we are now we are finishing year 1. We are starting to establish the living labs, and we hope that things will develop further, and we'll be happy to report how things are going. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe after all the presentations, one general question. All the projects are interesting, are innovative, but during your work, the majority of the projects are coming to an end. Did you feel that different stakeholders, maybe the politics, the economy, also general public, is aware of the importance, is coming towards your projects, or do you still feel you're going somewhere that other people are not thinking it is really important for the future? Yeah.
Maybe if I start. All these projects have also several, or we organize several workshops, and these workshops are actually the goal public are stakeholders like water agencies, ministries, and local communities as a community. And from our workshops, we saw that actually these topics, drinking water protection, flood mitigation measures, non-structural flood mitigation measures, land use management is actually very important. They are aware of it. So actually we had always many participants, up to 50, which is also regarding our partners from Europe, from Germany, Austria. They were astonished how many stakeholders we can get to such workshops. So this points out that this is very important, and they see the importance. But there is a problem in our case, or most cases, that also the people from agencies, ministries, or these institutions, they are aware of it and so on, but the system does not allow them to act as they would like to do, or if I may say like this. So actually this is still one way we have to go, one path we have to to continue going and making this collaboration, cooperation, communication, and this is the most important. And also communication within all this, also sectoral communication.
Is it the lack of will or the lack of financial resources? What would you say?
I would say that it's a lack of system or a problem in the system. So, yeah, but I'm optimistic. So I think it will become better. So yeah.
Mrs. Jamnik.
So in the AMIIGA project, we also invited different stakeholders to cooperate with us in a kind of regional implementation group, we said. So we organized many workshops and invited also the representatives of the different agencies and ministries, representatives of local communities, and they came, as Barbara said. But at the end, we concluded that for the success of the project, it would be necessary that the agencies would be included in the project. They do not recognize the project as their own. And at the end, they still do not understand the goals of a project, and of course, they cannot help us how to implement our solutions into practice.
Yeah. Actually, I can just copy paste what you have said. I mean, it's the probably we have different levels of the problem, but I'm quite satisfied with the development of the project of an interaction with the stakeholders. We are very happy with the fact that last decade people are more and more aware that this is a problem and that probably we have to change something, because just speaking about economical damages, for example, in agriculture I mentioned in the field of drought, this is very comparable with the floods, but of course the drought problem is a little bit problematic in a way that is slow process. So still, for example, these days we are very happy to have sunshine outside, very dry period. I mean, but when we are talking about the water sector, of course, this is not the case. So I think that what I would like to stress here is really to promote this integrated water management. So for this, we need a legislation. I'm not a very formal person, but still I think that sometimes when we are asking for the action, we have to have some legal frameworks in place. And this is in case of droughts. We don't have these kind of things. We were searching the best way how to do it, and the Water Framework Directive is a bit, let us say, connected with this, but mainly last year we focused on water quality, not really in water quantity. So I think that speaking about this part, which is just very formal one, but for some protocols, we have to have a plan, and plans should be integrated in some of legal frameworks. But speaking about general public, I think that we are on the right track.
So in our case, I would say urban food production is quite likable topic, and it attracts a lot of people, and it is basically used also to solve many social issues. Our partner city, for example, Andreja, had is solving long-term unemployment through urban gardening, and it's actually classified as edible city, where you have all this urban landscape turned into nice edible landscapes, let's say, and they have the concept everything is free to pick. However, when you say, well, now you have to use your waste to grow your food, then you have to close your cycle in order your food to be really sustainable. It's not sustainable if you import your resources from outside. So this is the major jump or difference between urban gardening as we know it and urban gardening as we want it. So then you enter into a whole field of barriers. First of all, we don't have legislation for at least in Slovenia, for water reuse still. Even if you want to do it, well, you don't have standards. There are a whole bunch of health hazard issues that are not well addressed, and so there are many barriers. However, people are open to it, and even farmers were asking if they can reuse treated wastewater, of course. But there are many gaps, different gaps in legislation. I would like also to present a nice example, for example, from Sweden. They are reusing urine since the 90s. And they have pilots, which are neighborhoods, city neighborhoods, let's say from people from 100 to 500 people, inhabitants. They are separating urine there because, well, just to explain that the major nutrients, the most of the nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, are in the urine. And they don't have problems with that. They are doing it since the 90s. They are reusing it, and they are actually closing the cycle at the neighborhood level. So this is the kind of food production that we want to turn into a more, or introduce it in a more systemic way, so that we can really address some challenges of resource depletion. Let's just mention phosphorus, which is kind of a limiting resource. It's not renewable. So there are positive examples. There are a lot of challenges, but we are trying to address them.
So everything was said already, so I just confirm everything is like it was said. So the responses and the stakeholder participation is really good. I think in Slovenia we have really high level of awareness. So basically, and also on different levels, which means from the personal awareness of general population, also institutional awareness is relatively high. Another dimension I would like to, let's say, discuss is, of course, everybody is pro-green, pro-sustainable food production, pro-that and that. And then I said, okay, will you send your part of the land for increased retention for, oh, no, this is my land. So basically, we are touching some very sensitive issues. And immediately when you are talking about the land, then everybody turns, no, this is mine. Very conservative. So there are several issues that we have to break. This is not yours, because your land is not your land, and you have to change the perception that I'm not giving part of my land to save the entire watershed, even with some sustainable measure and so on. So we think that we know that people are behaving sustainable, green. We have very nice advertisement, don't buy plastic bags and so on. But when you touch the issues of land, at least in Slovenia, but I imagine elsewhere as well, then you are touching some very sensitive topics.
Mr. Kozelj.
Yeah, we have quite the same experiences. So as everybody said, positive, everything. Maybe just a really back practice case from the issue that Professor Banovec also mentioned. A good practice was in Salzburg, Austria, where they have installed some measures in the upper part of the catchment to mitigate floods, and installed flood protection measures there. And they came up with a voluntary mechanism of financing, so that the affected inhabitants in the downstream region would finance the upstream measures, and of course the operation or the maintenance and stuff. So they came up with a cooperation which was voluntarily. They had a lot of communication, came up with this, and it is definitely one of the best models that you can have. But of course also for Austria, where it was finalized or implemented, it is one example. So not much was done in other places, and the difficulties which was mentioned with land is present everywhere.
Okay. I'll just tell you, I will invite you to join the debate, start thinking about your questions. We're just gonna say a few more words. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, actually, it triggered my
Yeah.
thoughts related to our experience was during the project development. There are two things that I would like to stress. First of all, we were a bit, let us say, lucky that last year it was really severe drought in all Europe, in northern part of Europe. So what I would like to stress here that these kind of projects that really helped a lot countries in Alpine region, like Austria, they are also like Slovenia, meant as a rain-sufficient country. So our experience through the project really helped colleagues in Austria very much to have something in place there, which was not the case in the past. So this knowledge share is something really very useful, and we were very amazed how useful it was also for insurance companies. So at our final conference we had in Vienna a few weeks ago, we found that all representatives from insurance companies, they found also this tool, which I have described to you previously, was checked by them. So perhaps this is something, I mean, this knowledge share, it's something we were very happy during the development of the project to really to have more stakeholders involved in the process and really to share our experiences.
That was exactly one thing I was wondering. All your projects, you have partners across different countries, 6, 7, 8 countries, a lot of partners. What is your experience in cross-border cooperation in your project? Because in this topic, in water management cross-border, management cross-border work is really important. Maybe Ms.
I would say in our case, cross-border is really not an issue. It's cross-disciplines issue and cross-sectoral issue, much more than cross-border. It's very difficult to find common language between disciplines, and actually not just this project, but many projects that I have been also involved in the past, that was the main issue, because all the projects involved people from technical, let's say, disciplines more, people from social sciences, and this was really a challenge to overcome, and it's the challenge that we have also in EdiCitNet. Even technical disciplines between themselves, it's sometimes difficult, and technical and social sciences is even more. So in my experience, cross-border is not a problem, but cross-discipline.
But it is important to have projects like in different countries.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I don't think it's otherwise. Well, if we talk about European funding, it's first of all multidisciplinary, and cross-border it's absolutely a must.
Do you think that EU has funds for such projects? Is there enough, let's say, financial resources for the project, or is it more projects than financial funds? What do you think? Is it lack of projects for the funds, or the other way around?
I think everybody will agree it's lack of funds because if we take, for example, less than 10% of the projects are funded, sometimes 5% in some calls, so it's... But what is the other experience of the others?
Okay, okay, maybe any questions from the public? No? Okay, then we can just move. I wanted to stress another topic. Maybe you mentioned at the beginning about climate change. We're all talking about climate change and your project. I think that the awareness about the climate change is present nowadays in the society, more or less. How did you feel about it? How did you see it?
Yeah, the society is aware of climate change because it's bombarding from all the media and somehow from this CO2 and all this. But we have to say that it's important that also institutions are aware of climate change, like water suppliers or water agencies. In Slovenia, the Slovenian water agency is making actually a good program, and they did climate change projections and the report and the impact on water resources, surface waters and groundwaters. But we have to be aware that also water suppliers have to take into consideration climate change. But the climate change is not only affecting the water quantity, but climate change is affecting also water quality from different reasons. Actually, the higher temperature of waters, we have then more microbes, they are living better then and so on. Land use is changing because of climate change, and then because of land use changes, we have different quality and so on. So this should be considered also in water safety plans from the water supply companies. But we know that in Slovenia we have several water companies. There are also many which have actually no human resources to do that. So this is one issue which should be tackled in the future.
Of course, I can confirm Barbara's thinking. We are one of our aim to cooperate in the European projects is also to be prepared for the cases in the future, for the cases that could endanger drinking water supply in a way of quality and quantity of drinking water. So we have learned a lot in the recent years, and we wouldn't have learned so much if we were not a partner in so many projects as we have been recently.
Maybe I just wanted a sub-question there about groundwater. Maybe in Slovenia we think that we have enough water resource and everything, but do you think that the water management, the groundwater management, is good enough for the future?
I think there is a lot of work that has to be done. So Slovenia is going to prepare new national management plan. I think it will be for the period 21 to 26 or 27. So I'm sure that the results of our project should be input for these activities for the preparing national management plan. And what we are also missing is the local supporting mechanism for the national management plan. So there is a lot of information on the local level. So this information should be included in the national management plan. So one of the conclusion of AMIIGA project is also that we should strengthen the local management regarding water resources. There are not many local communities that are aware that it is important that they are also a partner in water management.
Okay.
I'm obviously talking about floods, so
yeah.
climate change and floods. So in our project, we actually modeled already. This is, let's say, a pilot. I think one of the first pilots in Slovenia that we modeled the anticipated climate change scenario using different forecasting models and scenarios. And the results are worrying. And of course, why? It's quite clear. For example, there are different reasons. First reason is that snowing as a precipitation is a natural retention measure, very important one. And if there is no snow, all the water comes from the mountains. So our flooding events will increase with the anticipated, now already modeled climate change. Regarding the adaptation to climate change, now we are talking about, let's say, previous question, and it was about the awareness. Everybody is kind of aware that we are living in the climate change era, and but nobody is really aware who has to do something about it. So who has to do something about it? And we are just looking to each other from the point of view of institutions. Local communities, they're watching at the state is watching at different agencies, or perhaps some politicians which are still skeptic about the climate change and so on. So we are kind of in the situation where everybody is quite aware that we should be very worried, we should be doing something, but not many things has been done. So this is an issue, we have to start working on it. Thank you.
You want just to add something?
Oh, sorry. Just one short comment about who has to do something. I think we really need some systemic solutions because I mean it's good that people are aware and the individual can do something, but I honestly think that the impact of individuals' awareness is overrated. Unless we come up with some systemic solutions, I don't think we can do much. So, unfortunately.
Just something related to climate change and droughts. Of course, we didn't make this simulation through the project, but still, we wanted to have an idea how the drought developed in the region over the last 50 years. So what we can say now, that the behavior of drought is changing in all the region. So we have problems with some droughts. They were, let us say, not in common. In the past, we had problems with summer droughts. Also now we will probably very fast, we will face with some droughts in some regions due to heat waves which are appearing outside. But what is in particular, let us say, problematic for Slovenia as well, is spring droughts. Probably we all are aware that this year, early in the beginning of February and March, we had really very, very high temperature, quite above the average. So very warm winter, and then after early spring, and the development of plants, we had green Slovenia already in March. So this could be a problem to have really problems with severe droughts already in spring. And then after in autumn, we have another problem which is appearing with the sufficient rain available at that period of time. So the changing behavior of the drought is something we have observed in the whole territory of DriDanube region, not only in the southern parts, but also in northern parts. And it will be probably, the scenarios are showing that the signal, also from IPCC report, the southeastern Europe will be affected due to drought even more severely in the following future.
Maybe in different topics, you've been all talking about the system, about the communications among institutions. Out of your projects, maybe which would be specifics or information that the decision-making bodies should take out of your projects for better future, for better system, let's say? Maybe Mr. Kozelj.
Yeah. So one thing that we have identified in the CAMARO-D project was that the water management plans and the spatial planning in the country was not harmonized in a communication way in between different fields, and also in a time manner. So when one plan is established, the other one follows in a few years, and this communication and interconnection of measures, where to stress the land use developments, is quite a major issue in this area. So one point would be the intergovernmental, technical field exchange, and to harmonize a little bit the protocol. So also the land use development plans and the framework is addressing this issue, that it should be a more flexible way and a harmonized way in this manner.
Actually, as it's what said today already many times, water is everywhere. So water is also in all ministries, if you say. So it is in flooding or in a drought or fires, and this is then, or as a resource of drinking water. This is health ministry then, because drinking water is health issue and so on. So water is everywhere, and water management, integrated water management is very important. And it is very important, as Daniel said, that this should be actually the task for the future, that governmental institutions cooperate in this more deeply in the integrated water management, and also involving the local community, because we have a river basin management plan which is very general, But we have to focus also and act locally, because local community will solve many issues.
Yeah, again we agree. So the magic word we are using is participatory water management. And I think when I first met participatory water management, I read it, I think, in a literature from 30 years ago or something. It's very old idea, it's written, it's necessary. It was done, I think also it was written in our first Water Act, let's say, first, from the 1892, but they were different empire at that time, but it was already participatory. I think the Hammurabi Code is writing something about the participatory water management that's thousands of years ago. So the SDG 6 that will be signed now, it's talking about the participatory water management. And yet again, our law, our Ministry of Environment said we don't need it because they cut away in the entire chapter on participatory water management. So it's obviously not still accepted that we have to do the participatory water management. We have to do it.
Jamnik, you wanted to add?
So in AMIIGA project, we also would like to promote this local approach. So we believe that the local groundwater management should become the supporting mechanism for the national groundwater management. So the competences and responsibilities of local groundwater management should be enforced.
Okay.
Yeah, and finally, from our project, what we hope to come out is standards for resources recovery, for urban resources recovery and reuse within the city, and also a suggestion for systemic solutions for that. The good thing about it is that we would like to make use of resources that are seen as a waste. So for example, even rainwater is considered or is turned into wastewater, which causes many problems in mixed sewer systems, for example, which is majority of the cities have mixed sewer systems. If this water could be reused in the city for producing something and even more nutrients within the city, I think this could be a big progress. But as I said, it's very challenging and we are addressing these challenges.
Okay, yeah, just add.
Perhaps just one remark from our side. Our experience with policymakers was related to this, that we are very happy that International Commission for Protection of Danube River found this approach very interesting to tackle transboundary issues. So the management of drought in all the region is quite important due to the fact that if there is a drought in place in northern part, probably the countries in the southern part will be affected due to the problem. So therefore I'm very happy that perhaps this kind of approaches sometimes on international level or coming from the outside also trigger the communication inside the countries. Unfortunately, many times this is the case. So sometimes this growing problem in the country and having a lot of things in place, but it doesn't work. So probably sometimes also this international dimension or SAVA Commission also had a strong interest to be included inside. So perhaps this sometimes can help us really to trigger the process in the country.
Thank you. We're running out of time. 1 hour is really short. Maybe one last possibility for, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you. The title of the panel, Water Resource Conservation, for me is, from ecosystem point of view, is almost impossible. What means conservation in this meaning? We have to talk about protection, because water resources you mentioned here we have, or more in many places in the world also it's groundwater. But the problem in Slovenia and also in most other countries is that the quality of groundwater is directly in relation to the surface water quality. And the surface water quality is result of our way of life. This is the problem. And we only have one water cycle. And it's almost impossible to manage so-called to manage. You mentioned a new approach of managing of water, but still we have only some part of this managing. Drought, your flooding problems here around, all around here, and so on. But we still have problems in what are the pollution level in this area. And when we talk about the health of the food, so-called self-sufficient food production, it's the question of health, it's the question of material we used every day, and about the pollution. Today we are completely different pollution level, and we still have so-called water treatment plant. We really do not treat it water. We are just operating with water. We have more problems with the cleaning water or cleaned water compared to the wastewater. So we have more or less the same problems in the groundwater and in the surface water. So conservation of water resources is in the same level as zero waste. It's zero waste. It's impossible from biological point of view. It's only the question what kind of waste we have and how we could recycle this waste and so on. So the problem is more, how to say, complex. It's not only the question about the engineering way of living, engineering way of thinking, and the natural way of thinking, and maybe social, because we are social animal. We are not a normal animal. This is the biggest problem for us. And so I see that you ask is political dependence or political meaning or some other. I think the main problem is that we have all completely different way of life compared of 10, 20, 30 years ago, and this is the problem, and we are still in very old, what you say, engineering way of resolving problems. This is one of the. So today, pollution is completely different.
Thank you, Professor Ton, about this comment. I'm very glad you mentioned that the pollution is actually a mirror of our way of life, and this is what we are keep hearing. Well, first of all, we need to stop talking about waste water, at least, because it's not a waste, it's a resource. And the obstacle of micropollutants in wastewater, that is why we cannot reuse it, because you have micropollutants. Well, this is actually the result of our way of life. The only way we will get rid of micropollutants is if we don't have them in our life, because they are passing the treatment plant. They are not being treated. If we don't reuse wastewater together with the potential micropollutants on site, then we get them on our plate through fish or through by other cycles. The thing is, they are present, and if we want to live, let's say, more healthy, if we want to cycle the things in our life in a more healthy way, then we simply need to be careful about the whole about the processes that we take in our life, how we live, what do we use, how do we consume, what do we consume, and so on. So.
Okay, thank you. Maybe any other final comment, short? Otherwise, I would like to thank you all for being here with us, for contributing to this debate, for your ideas and work, and everybody for being here with us. Thank you very much.